Hello, everybody, and welcome to Evenings with an Author at the American Library in Paris, sponsored by Grow at Annenberg. I'm Rachel Donadio, the Curator of Cultural Programs at the Library, and I am thrilled this evening to welcome Odile Hellier and Alan Riding to discuss Odile's new book, Village Voices, her memoir of the Village Voice Bookstore. For many of you, Odile requires no introduction, but she was born in the south of France during World War II and raised in Lorraine near the German border and Brittany on the Atlantic Ocean. She is the founder and owner of the Village Voice Bookshop, a hub of Anglophone literary life and culture that operated in the heart of Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris for more than 30 years. And in conversation with her this evening is Alan Riding, a former correspondent of the New York Times and the author of books on Mexico, Shakespeare, opera, and the cultural life of Paris during the Nazi occupation. He lives in Paris with his journalist wife, Marlise Simons. This evening, the conversation will run for about 45 minutes between the two of you here, and then we will open it up for questions from the audience, for those of you here in person, and then if we have time, for the many people also joining us on Zoom. So welcome to the library, and please have a good round of applause for these two.
Bonsoir, which is, as you know, the requirement when you come to France, the first thing you have to learn. This book is a celebration of the left bank, a celebration of Paris, a celebration of American writers in the latter half of the 20th century, celebration of a wonderful bookshop, and a celebration of Odile Hellier. Now, she is far too modest to want me to have said that, but it is, because without her, so many things would not have happened. And Rachel mentioned a couple of things about her background that I think I should add just a couple more. Not irrelevant to the fact that, the World War II did cast a shadow on her childhood, because both her father and her grandmother were killed in 1944. From her years in Brittany, she finished up going to collège and lycée, and somewhere along the line, she met a Russian woman. Now, this is very important because there are three parts to Odile: French, Russian. This Russian woman called Natasha, and she taught Odile Russian. And so Odile actually went to study at the University of Rennes, modern Russian. And then she went to the University of Moscow. So there was a different Odile being grown at that time, not the American Odile that we know now. It was a dramatic moment because she was there and Khrushchev was dumped and Brezhnev took over. So back in France, she taught Russian in a lycée, and then the old Soviets went into Czechoslovakia, and she appears to have been upset by that. I don't think you were a communist before that, but the identity with Anyway, so at that point she said, what's the other superpower? The US. So off she went to the US. This is a very truncated version. To the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she met an Algerian academic who'd been the first Algerian ambassador to the United States until the US broke relations with Algeria in '67. And this chap stayed there and had become appointed head of the Algerian oil company, Sonatrach. And he'd met Odile, and he needed a translator. And so she was invited over and began her American life. So the next decade, shall we say, became Odile's American decade, and it set the stage for devoting the next 3 decades to American literature, with a bit of British, Irish, and Canadian letters thrown in, ma non troppo. So here you are now, back in Paris, late 1979, unemployed, and yet 3 years later, you opened the Village Voice. How did that happen?
yeah. How did that happen? Well, first of all, when I returned to France, I was, many memories of America. And America was not only my job, which was very interesting, by the way, but it was also what was happening in the States at the time. It was the 70s, and it was a time teeming with the protests and with unrest, but also with fighting for equal rights for African Americans and equal rights for other minorities. And it was a very interesting time. And of course, given my job, I certainly was not going to march and to go on manifestations, on demonstrations. So I experienced that very time full with effervescence. And I just, through a culture, first of all, in Amherst, it was a very vibrant time. And as well, the bookstores. I really loved the bookstores. And there were debates, discussions, and it was a great time for me, the bookstores. And then, of course, I was reading every day the Washington Post and the New York Times, but I loved the Village Voice, the weekly Village Voice, New York Village Voice. I loved it because it gave me an alternative look at the news. And also because I loved the way they had all those discussions about art and avant-garde art. And also I loved their petite annonce. I loved them. They were so fun and so on. So the Village Voice, and you understand why I did call the bookstore the Village Voice.
But how on earth did you think I can just open a bookstore like that?
Yes, that's not exactly what happened because they did not land into, the bookstore. Yeah. So, I was working. First of all, I was working a job, that I did not like very much, and I was, turning 40, and it was very much for me to imagine working in an office. I just could not take it, and so I thought I have to reinvent my life. And of course, all those memories from New York came back. And I have a friend here on the first row who was also in Washington. It was in Washington, New York. And we did a lot of things together in culture, film, and so on. And there were so many memories. And again, I was working with women on a film. And it was the bookstores. And it was going to bookstores where you can have a coffee, and even, and getting the book and being there. No, it was something that I missed in France. When I returned to France in 1979, I don't know. I left in '69. And it was after '68. So there was a kind of animation. It was, you could feel that there was life, effervescence as well. But when I returned, I felt that it was not the city I had known. And I felt even the city close in on itself. And I decided I have to do something. And, going through the bookstores in Paris, I did not find the energy. I did not find the energy I had found in the States. And I thought about it, and I said, why not? Why not try? And then I said, no, this is not possible. I don't have a cent to do it. Not possible. But anyway, it was nagging me. And I decided finally that I would sit down, write my project. And to my surprise, because that project, was really, I knew that it was not realistic, but I felt also that I was sure that I could do it, And so, I was surprised to have friends and family to say, yes, why not? And so I was really helped, and and without any help, you cannot go anywhere. I mean, it's the help of people, family and my friend who helped me go through that. So that's how I decided. It took 2 years to do it, and maybe you want me to stop. No. Because
well, if you're talking, I can't buy a book, so you. No.
Yeah.
Now, this book is a memoir, obviously, but it's also a record of the truly amazing succession of American and others of writers who came through the Village Voice to present books or just to present themselves. And if I dare drop a few names, I'll start with those in the audience, like Jake Lamar and Nancy Houston.
Yes, and Denise Herson, and it's amazing. And Margot is there, Margot Berchevsky, and it's amazing, to see all
and a
those,
few others who couldn't
and
make
Nancy Houston, and extraordinary. Thank you so much for being here. It's fantastic.
Well, some who didn't make it, like Toni Morrison, Margaret Atwood, Richard Ford, Russell Baker, Raymond Carver, Edmund White,
Richard Ford could have.
Susan Sontag, Charlie Williams, Mavis Gallant. Anyway, the list is absolutely stunning. Did you? How do you persuade them to come to this little bookshop,
well,
which, in a bit of a grubby street,
I knew that
to be
you
honest?
would ask me this question, so I knew it. So they did not land, by plane on the bookstore. I mean, that's why onto the bookstore. So that's was for sure. And so I had really what I will do is to tell you how it happened really in the reality. What happened is that when I opened the bookstore in 1982, it was a bookstore. My brother was an architect. He renovated it, and it was really a very good place, very beautiful place. And first of all, also,
Odile, you have to hold the mic closer, or people can't hear.
Thank you. And yes, because I gesticulate a lot, And yes, but I have to go back there. I have to think a little bit. And so why? How did I open the bookstore?
How did you get the writers?
Yeah, the writers. Yes. So first of all, when I opened the bookstore, it was 1982, and the bookstore immediately was full of young people, young American people, and they were so educated, highly educated, so dynamic. And immediately they called the Village Voice a home away from home. And also they turned the bookstore into a beehive of creative activities. It was an incredible time. And these people made it so. They did so many things: publishing, reviews, inviting people, organizing readings. And some people were there. Denise was there, and Jake was there, and so on. People were absolutely fantastic. And we had, of course, in Paris, people who lived in Paris, like Diane Johnson, and also Edmund White was there. He came a little bit later on, but still he was there. And all these people gave so much to the Village Voice. It was their home away from home. And they were brilliant people. And so this is how, these people were in Paris, but at the same time, they knew people in America. They knew people, everywhere. And so even before they could be translated, even before they could be published in France, they were at the Village Voice. So it's not me who, brought them to me. No, it was the energy of a place that, did it. Yeah.
Did anyone refuse you? Did anyone, was there a writer you said, I really want that writer to come, and for some reason he just always finds an excuse?
Not that I remember. I mean, it could be, but not that I remember. Everyone was I would say that the writers are here. Everyone wanted to read at the Village Voice. So, really, but no, but it is not me. It is the people who made it. I insist on that because alone you cannot do something like that. I would not have been able to do it.
No, but obviously the expats, as you say, the authors are here saying, if you come to Paris, you must go and read at the Village Voice. Presumably, the French publishers, although they were principally interested in their own French versions of whatever book it is, but they reluctantly cooperated or enthusiastically?
No, on the contrary. Because once the book was published in French, they would almost always ask me first. I was the first. They asked, Odile, would you like to organize a reading for so and so? And I am the one who never refused. So, never refused. And there were very famous people, not famous, people who were starting, people who had never read anywhere. I was always, and this is what maybe is part of the success of the Village Voice, is that I was always open to whoever wanted to read. Isn't it true, the people from the Village Voice? Yeah. Yeah, so this, I believe, was my strength. Yeah.
Now, it has been said by some people that writers have egos.
Yes, but since I don't have any ego, it was perfect. Perfect marriage.
Did any of them arrive drunk or behave badly? I was reading what you said about James Elroy, for example.
Oh, yes. But I loved it. I mean, I loved it because it was so funny. It was, and I wrote, little sketch. I mean, it's a sketch, about Elroy. And when he was at the Festival America, 2 weeks ago, I certainly did not want to meet him because I did not know how he was going to react to that piece. But he was so busy that he never heard of me. So it was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, there was an incredibly different range of writers who would come, and very American in many cases. I mean, a Jim Harrison who sort of almost arrives by horse.
Yes, but he was, he was interested in going to all the bars at night. But when he was at the Village Voice, it was wonderful. He was wonderful. No, there is Mr. Ford. Richard Ford.
This is the beginning of a love story.
Okay. No, Richard. There was a Sunday. I had organized a Sunday, Sunday reading with Margaret Atwood and Richard Ford and Mavis Gallant. Introducing Atwood. And
just think about that.
Just
those three.
And then
they would keep
Sunday,
most bookshops going for a year.
So that Sunday, I mean, it was interesting. That Sunday filled, both floors filled. And suddenly Mavis calls. She's tired in the mornings. She's tired, and she will be not first with Atwood, but second, after Ford. So Ford, there was no smartphone. Ford never showed up for, his time. That was now his time. I had tried to reach him. I could not reach him. It was a Sunday, whatever. And so we were waiting. Judith was here, and she took a cab to go and fetch Mavis because we could not start. It was incredible. And 2 floors, And suddenly we decided that we would start, the reading with Margaret Atwood. And, comes Mavis. Slowly, she comes. So, okay, fine, we start again, And then when Mavis is really, telling, with a lot of humor, she's with Margaret Atwood, she's talking about her work and so on. And suddenly, Richard Ford comes and said, I lost my way. And he had been there at least 4 times before. So, and people laughed, as you do, and they applauded. And so that was it. Now, Richard Ford now was the king. And the other ones were just, second fiddles.
Well, some of you here probably heard Richard Ford some time ago. And someone can say at least he wasn't in jail.
No. He was
he was
at Festival America, and he gave a very good talk about his on his latest.
Tell me about the audience. I mean, it's like some of tonight's audience, but many other audiences. Were the audiences sort of rather intimidated by big names, or did they react? Did they get angry, disagree, shout out? What happened?
Yeah, sometimes they were about a few times when people disagreed, and each time it was not wokeism. It did not exist at the time, but it was on censorship. It was on subjects very, very delicate, and. And this is something that when I was listening to my tapes before, writing the book, I still could hear the scraping of chairs on the floor, and this we knew that people, for Elroy as well, he was so rude that people left, and yes, the scraping of chairs on the floor, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I remember. It did not happen often, but this I remember. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what everyone remembers is how crowded it was,
yes.
and how to get in, and how not to fall down the stairs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, most of the time the stairs were full as well, so you could not.
And spilling downstairs. I mean, you had a sound system that worked downstairs.
Yeah,
also.
That's right. Remember that. Yeah.
And to the street. I mean, I remember the people being in the street.
Yeah.
Did the neighbors ever complain?
Not really. I am surprised about that.
Well, they had castels down the road, so
That's right. They were used to it already. Yes. And especially in the morning, sometimes they were there early in the morning, and you could see people coming out, the great names, the great stars, and you could see coming out of Castel at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they were tipsy and could not find their drivers. So it was a scene.
And Odile, what were you doing, watching them at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Well, it happened because we had nights, and I had to be very early in the morning at the store. Yeah, it happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I go into a bookshop as an occasional author that I am, I'm always totally overwhelmed by the number of books on display, by the number of other authors. How did you pick the books? How did you know which books were going to be of interest? Did you try to be very much on the ball, what was just coming out all the time? Or did you keep classics there?
There's someone that all of you know here, and it is Shakespeare & Co., and it is Sylvia of Shakespeare & Co. And one time she told me, and she put this in the blurb, so this is why I remember well, and she told me, she asked me, Odile, how do you pick up your books? And this I remember the answer because she wrote it in the blurb. And I said, read. And I believe that's what I did. I would read a lot at night, and that's it. And I don't sleep much. This is my luck. I don't sleep much. Yeah.
Do you have? I mean, it's a typical pivot question. Do you have favorite authors? I mean, authors from certain periods or certain?
Of course, there are so many that they are in my head, and it's difficult to get them out of my head. But for instance, I was speaking about Richard Ford. He impressed me a lot. Russell Banks. I really love his work. It's history, history. Richard is more the inner world of a person who is under stress, who is going through many difficulties. I would say Sontag. of course. Sontag was a fantastic person, and she was coming all the time when she was in Paris, and it would be mainly in December. And she was, it was really wonderful to talk to her. And she's the one. I did not dare to ask her, would you like to read at the Village Voice? I did not ask. And she came to me and she says, Odile, I would love to read at the Village Voice. So it was really wonderful. I loved also the poets. You talked about C.K. Williams, whom you admired, of course, and Ellen Hinsey for me is a great poet. There are so many, and Mavis Gallant. She's not with us now, but Nancy could talk about her as well because, it's very moving. I mean, in fact, I will tell you. When I started looking for my tapes, I had boxes and boxes and boxes of tapes. And when I started working on that after the closing of the bookshop, I never listened to them over the 30 years. I was at the Village Voice, of course. But when I started listening to those tapes, it was very moving. It was extremely moving. And sometimes I had to stop. Because listening to the tapes, you have the voice of the author. You have the voice, and the voice brings up the scene, the visual scene. And I could remember every single detail. And this is how I decided, first of all, I was doing this, I was going through those tapes because I thought that maybe I should send these tapes to a foundation. And they would make podcasts of that, or videos, because we have the videos as well, so maybe films, we don't know. And I decided, no, I don't want to do that. They will do that if they want, but I don't want. So I picked up the authors. I already knew, I would remember, and then when I would listen to those tapes, I knew whom to pick up. It was sometimes, because of the author. Sometimes it was because of the themes, they were addressing. And so it was very moving. And this is how I decided to write it. Because the writing could allow me to give all those little details. The podcast is flat for me instead. I am wrong. I'm sure that I am wrong. But, still, I could feel that it is the writing which is going to give the nuances of those readings. Yeah.
The book includes a number of dialogues, and what is interesting, not just the dialogue with somebody who was, say, moderating, but dialogues with members of the public.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is also what made the book, because the author presents his book, reads from his book, but the questions, they are unexpected. Like tonight, some questions are unexpected. And,
wait till they start.
Yeah, and so this is what is interesting. And the questions always brought something out of the writer. And this is what was very interesting, and this is what I did it, because otherwise, to repeat what the author said, no, it was really the dialogue. It was that dialogue that was really interesting. Yeah.
You mentioned you read a lot, because you sleep a little. Well, that's a good way of reading, I know. Although a lot of people start reading and then go to sleep. But even so, how could you possibly... you worked like mad. Every time I went in there, you were running around and the people asking your attention, one thing and another. Even at the weekends. How did you have time to create time to read? I'm sure a lot of people find themselves in their busy lives saying, I wish I had more time just to be isolated and read.
Sundays as well. Nights and Sundays.
And did you speed read? Because you had a lot of... you had a whole bookshop.
No.
I'm really intrigued. I'm not going to open a bookshop, though. Did the distributor send you books and say, look, maybe you like this?
Yes, that's right.
They would be trying to, in a sense, sell...
But also the people in the bookshop. I see Gwen there, and Gwen is the one who called me. Odile, you have to read this book. And it was the book by Mendelssohn, The Six of Six. And I loved that book. I read it very quickly, owing to Gwen, who is also an author. And I read it quickly, and immediately I picked up my phone, and I called Chicago. And I called the rep in Chicago. I had the telephone number. And I said, I love this book. Can we have Daniel Mendelssohn? 10 minutes later, I'm telling you, I'm not joking. I'm not lying. 10 minutes later, Mendelssohn was on the phone. I had never met him. And he said, Odile, I'm coming to Paris. He was not known in France. I'm coming to Paris. In 2 weeks, I will be in Paris. I can read from the book in 2 weeks. It was marvelous. Thank you.
Well, hopefully there were many cases like that.
Yeah.
Those of us who would go into the bookshop, if Odile was busy, there was always a strong figure standing there.
Yes.
Called Michael Neal.
Michael. And
Tell us about Michael. He was an extraordinary, eccentric, very cultivated, brilliant man.
Yeah.
Ironic.
Yeah.
English.
And it's very moving to know
Tell us
that.
about it. How did
Well, first of all, it's very moving to know that Gwenola, his wife and widow now, he's here tonight, and this is very moving to have her tonight, and also the sons. And it's Raphael and excuse me, I don't remember. Raphael is there, and it's very moving to have them here, because Michael was a very particular person, very special, but very good person at heart. And this is something that counts for me, someone who has a big heart. And he had a big heart. And now, not everything was simple with him. He had his moods, and sometimes you did not know, what was happening in his head. But he was always fine with customers, especially if customers were looking for books that do not exist anymore or that they would love to read. And you could be sure that Mike the next day would have the book in his hands, not only to lend it, but to give it. Yeah, he was a wonderful person, and I miss him. I miss him a lot.
He was an extraordinary person, and he had vast areas of knowledge, but one particular area of knowledge happened to be the Second World War. And when I wrote this book about the cultural life of Paris during the Second World War, during the occupation, I hadn't actually discussed it with him. And when I went in there, he brought it up and happily didn't correct things, mistakes he probably saw. But I realized that he knew as much or more than I did, and I made the mistake of not talking to him before I wrote the book. It would have been immensely helpful.
No, he had, some people did not like him, that's for sure, but I'm sure that some people did not like me either, but they would not say it openly. And one of the characteristic of Michael is that he would practically quote Orwell. One of his big authors. He would practically quote Orwell when people entered the bookstore, or would quote Dylan, Bob Dylan. It was also his big thing, and he would sing, Dylan, and it was very. So how did I meet him? It was not. It was not out. It was not on my way. I met him. He came to the Village Voice in I would say the end of the 80s. And the first time he entered the bookstore, I did not know him, but he had two, I don't know how he did it, but books piled up on his shoulders. And piled up. And immediately he started talking to the people in the bookshop. And, and he could come back, I did not have a position to offer him, but he would come back regularly. And immediately it was like Jim Haynes, another character. And immediately those two would, talk to everyone, sell books to everyone. I even did not have to do the job. And also, I don't know, those people had an incredible heart. And I think that people felt it. And they, as you say, he was very bright. And he let me be the one I am. And this is very important too.
As long as he was the man he was, which he was.
Yeah, yeah.
As we all know. The book is anything but chronological. But it has this extraordinary collection of writers. How did you decide to organize it into themes or groups or chapters? It's not an easy job.
It's not an easy job. And in fact, it's funny that you are asking this because Edmund White, you knew him, Edmund White, and Edmund White was interviewed by René de Secati. And of course, it was on the subject of Jean Genet, homosexuality, and he presented, he presents Genet, gay writer. Immediately, de Secati tells him, no. In France, it would not be possible to say that Proust is a gay writer, Gide is a gay writer. It would not be possible. I mean, it is a reduction of their human being, of their humanity. How is it possible? And he says, well, constantly I am confronted with this problem in France. It was at the time when there was the big AIDS epidemics. Constantly I am confronted, confrontation with the French. And he said, this is what I want to say. And he said, and it's the same thing for bookstores. Bookstores in French, it's as if literature was a conversation with all the literatures of the world. And to us, for us, of course, in America, we ghettoize everything. And so we put things in, sociology, homosexuality, great literature, I don't know. But, and I do that, of course. You do that in French stores as well. So he said that, and he said, by doing this, by ghettoizing everything, you get a longer life for the books. And for instance, all my books, and he wrote a lot. All my books are in print. So, voilà. So, of course, I am not American, but I'm French, and I probably did a little bit of the two.
So, to the question of how you're organizing it.
Well, to the question I organize it, it's
okay, but
literature. I mean, it was literature.
Well, you have the poets, you have the
poets,
you have the Canadians, you have the Irish.
Yes.
But in some cases, it's more difficult to.
History, I would say, I would put a lot in history. I would say, history was a big shelf. Many shelves. The novels were downstairs. Definitely. Did I separate them? For instance, I see here Dennis, South Africa. I'm not sure that I was, put them in no, it was together, it was a conversation with the world, right? And no, I feel that, I don't know exactly, but I know that I was constantly putting books into place, into their place. I know it's constantly that you do that, this for sure. I remember working, doing this all the time. But whether I did separate categories, yes, of course, but at the same time, it was not, sociology and then philosophy would be somewhere else. I believe it was more like non-fiction, fiction, non-fiction. I believe it is more in that direction.
Your attraction is, at least to the writers, is principally to fiction writers, no? Most of this is fiction and poetry.
The second floor was pretty heavy.
No, I'm talking about the book.
The books, yeah, but the
memoir.
books, the memoirs and so on, it was on the second floor. So it was, we had many, it seems to me. You did not find what you wanted.
I'm saying that this book is mainly about fiction writers.
Oh yes, the book itself, fiction writers, absolutely, yes, fiction writers.
And you said when we were talking the other day that you wanted, in a sense, to have a bit of a mirror on American society at that time, and you mentioned Ed White, and you mentioned Jake in the context of your thoughts on that, what you were saying.
Alors, for Jake, I'm not going to repeat what he said in his novels, but it was interesting because Jake came from the States at the time of the civil rights movement, or the civil rights movement were already there, but at the same time it was a disappointment, a big disappointment. And Jake came to Paris after having gotten a big job in America, and he decided he could take a vacation. Isn't it true, Jake? No, not at all. I am inventing. But anyway, he arrived in Paris, right? And he stayed in Paris. And he wrote, besides his books on America, about America, he stayed in Paris and wrote 2 books on Paris. And I feel that those 2 books, books about the African Americans in Paris, one thing, but the other book was also interesting because it was at the time when there were a lot of things going on in Paris, revolts, the rebellions, and so on. And he was able to see, what France was doing. He has a line. It's very bizarre, very strange that the government would cling to such way of treating, the people, blacks, African Americans, and not African Americans, excuse me, blacks, from Africa, and Arabs. Everyone is one country, one country and one, you said it better than I do, Jake. And it was very interesting to see how he could see how France was rigid in the way she was treating our population, to make it short, yeah.
Our time is running out. However, I know you want to say a quick word about your ancient relationship with the American Library.
Yes, okay, yes, yeah. So I was the one to bring and sell the books when there were readings at night. So this. And the second thing, after I closed the Village Voice, I was asked by Mr. Trueheart to read and review books that had been selected to read them, and for the prize for the American Library Award, book award. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Excellent.
So it was an interesting job.
So it ended. This prolonged literary and intellectual party ended after 30 years, and there was a party which a bunch of us attended, but it's a bit like a wake. I don't know whether you understand the word
yes,
wake.
Yes, of course.
A bit like a wake.
Yeah.
But perhaps very briefly tell us why you closed.
Yeah. Not many reasons, but the first one was Amazon. There is no doubt about it. So we faced it. We were able to fight. But when the smartphone came up, it was very painful to see people having on their smartphone their application, Amazon application, and they would simply, call Amazon practically and before our eyes. And it was very, very difficult to take. And I believe this is the reason. The other reason is since Amazon in 1986, we did not have as many customers, because before Amazon came up, we had a lot of people from everywhere in the world. And they would, buy books that they could not find in their countries. And also, there was no problem with flights. You could carry the books you wanted, go back home with a suitcase of books. And now it was a different situation. It was beginning to be very difficult. And I knew that I was, getting, old, or not old, but still, it was the age, And I felt, will I be able to really close, in a couple of years or 5 years, when I know that I still have a lot to do, and I wanted to do a lot of different things, after that. And I decided to do it. And also, URSAF was one of the problems.
Not URSAF. No, well, you may have thought you were growing old then, but you certainly didn't, because this book is the proof of it. I mean, you left with 20 years of sound recordings, 10 years of videos, and worked and worked and worked. And I hope you enjoyed it, because it sounds like you enjoyed reliving all of that experience.
Absolutely. It was a different experience from being a bookseller, strangely enough.
And let me say, before I turn over to questions, you can relive it yourself here. It is a bit like attending many of those occasions, because apart from just the fact of the names and the famous thing, Odile describes the situations and the moods and the background in a brilliant way. It's a wonderful book. And there aren't many copies, so make sure you get your copy. Okay, any questions? A lot of people who have memories. If not questions, you can say, I remember.
Yeah. Yes?
Please.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, you came from the States. Oh, thank you so much for being here. We have not seen each other in a long time.
Yes. I have a question.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
My question. Yes, I interviewed you for Archipelago a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things you talked about was that what you could call the taste of readers. And of course, then there was the damage of Amazon. Could you talk about whether you see changes even in books, the kinds of books published?
Yeah.
How would you, this is too big a question, how would you be a bookseller today?
I wonder for two things, what you mentioned, Catherine. And I wonder because I read in the New York, I believe 3 weeks ago, an article by Menand, the critic. And he speaks about that if an independent bookstore today wants to survive, they have, and I use his expression, they have to go boutique. That is, they have to have all the paraphernalia around the books, like the museums today, which is beautiful. The museums is visual, but for the books it's more difficult. And also he speaks about a lot of different things. I mean, it's a fantastic article. And also I do wonder if I could today have so many great writers in that little room, that small room upstairs, and selling not the amount of books that publishers expect, So, it was they were interesting sessions, but if I sold, 50 books, that was it. Fnac would sell how many? So this was, also something that I could feel was coming. I could feel it, that the great times were over for independent booksellers. I could feel it. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Some other regulars from the...
You have another question?
Other regulars from the Village Voice. Please.
Yes, Odile.
Yes. Hello. Oh, yes.
There is a relation you did not mention, and which was very important. It was the relation between the Village Voice and the university research centers in Paris. La Sorbonne was not very far away.
Yeah.
And I must say that you invited writers, but we also invited writers.
Yes.
And there was really a very interesting circulation of writers between the research centers and the Village Voice.
Yeah.
And it was, you see, another way to be for them. I mean, it was interesting for us to see them in the research centers and to see them in the Village Voice.
Yeah.
They were different.
Yeah, yeah.
They expressed differently. They said different things.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, really, this was very, very precious. And I think, a lot of us, Marc Chentier, Régis Durand.
And you did present Grace Bailey.
Grace Bailey,
Grace Bailey, it was wonderful. And the picture you took is in the book.
So I don't see many of my colleagues tonight, but I want to speak for them and tell them that,
so much,
the Village Voice was really, really important for us too. And this, again, the circulation of the author's voice was very interesting because they were not quite the same authors in different places. So thank you so much, Odile.
Thank you.
And again, I hope I'm the voice for all my absent colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm intrigued to know whether you think, of course, something that's absent you don't necessarily miss, but the fact that literary agents don't really work in France. And I would notice that in the book you would say accompanied by the publisher, accompanied by the publisher. Do you think this matters, that France resists literary agents?
I really cannot really answer this question because I don't know the details, behind the curtain, agents, for instance, this book is without an agent. I did not have an agent. My agent was Stephen, who is not here tonight, Stephen Barclay, who brought me a lot of writers. Of course, I have to thank him because he was wonderful. And when he was the first one to read my book, the first one, and it was now almost 3 years ago, I believe. So it was finished 3 years ago, and I was very, shy when I gave him this, and 3 hours later, he was calling me, and he says, "Odile, I'm going to finish it before midnight." I really love it. So, it was really, what a hoof, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Please. Mike, sorry.
Odile.
Yeah, Dennis.
It's extremely difficult to speak tonight. It's completely bittersweet to see you sitting there. I think we all miss you terribly. We want your bookshop back. And we want you in it, the queen of the Village Voice. But I do have a question. I want to know when you first decided that you were going to start this bookshop, whether you realized what you were letting yourself in for. And I want to be more specific. We've spoken about the books in the shop. We've spoken about the readings. But there's something we haven't really named specifically, which is your own presence, not only between the potential readers and the books, but also in introducing the readings themselves. There's something about your own intensity and anxiety and generosity altogether that went into the chemistry of those readings. And I wonder whether when you actually had the idea of opening the bookshop, whether you realized that you were letting yourself in for all of those three dimensions.
Dennis brought to us, an incredible writers from South Africa, and he was there all the time. He was an incredible person for practically 30 years. A poet, a writer. He interviewed people. He presented South African. We would never have met those people he brought to us, extraordinary people. So thank you very much, Denise. Okay, no, I was not aware of that because it's just my nature. That's it. So I don't have to be conscious of something. I did not learn it. I did not, it's just my nature. That's all. So thank you for saying that. I'm very touched. I'm very moved. Thank you so much. Yeah.
One last question, yes.
Odile, I'm wondering, and I'm still wondering, although we've talked about it a bit, why you ended your memoir with a wonderful section on poetry in spite of all the space you devoted to fiction, and you called it The Center Holds. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, and there's another word to introduce that part. It is ceremonies. So ceremonies, it's really the supreme way of writing, I suppose. The poets. Novels, you have many words in novels. In poetry, you have to really say it in very few words. And it is also the music that is important in poetry. So, and also there were so many poets at the Village Voice. I believe that the category of the writers we had at the Village Voice were poets. And this is why, it was very difficult to choose to who is going to be there in the book. And I decided that it would be the people who lived in Paris, who were in Paris, because it was, coming back or going back to the beginning, which is, the third wave, and the people who were living in Paris, the expatriates. And also, we have to say that they were great people. I had Spender. The first one in the book is Spender. Can you imagine Stephen Spender, to have Stephen Spender? And Mary McCarthy was there on the first row. There are memories, I'm moved, and speaking about his relationship with Auden and about his time in Germany. And immediately, j'ai des frissons, hein? And C.K. Williams, so many times he gave those readings, and Ellen Hinsey, and Margot, who is here, who is a poet as well, and Marilyn Hacker, who just came back from the States, and she has a big cold tonight, and she could not be here, and fantastic. Fantastic. It was Virginia, and I have to say that Virginia has been my guardian angel, because she is the one. You can hear my voice, you can hear my French accent, you can hear my sometimes awkward way of speaking, and Virginia edited my book. So Virginia, how I really, and she has to be. Yeah.